So you want people to start speaking up and saying something about the crime and the violence in this town. Yet when you have somebody on tape killing somebody else, what do? If you're Gene Peters Baker, if you're the Jackson County prosecutor, you put them in the can for a few months. That's it. That's all she did. And I want to compare this, by the way, to someone else. But first, let me share the backstory here if you're not familiar with it. This was done, a good job, by the way, by Fox 4. I thought they were going a little woke-a-doke on us here, but not the case after this story. This is a clear shot at the prosecutor's office in Jackson County, Missouri, who is just absolutely terrible at its job. Thank goodness Gene Peters Baker is out of office, is leaving office later this year. But be careful what you wish for is the old saying, right? So here's this story about a young woman, Kaylee Love, who got into a dispute with her ex-boyfriend, and he shot and he killed her at just 19 years old. She had a little baby at the time, and this guy spent all of 8 months in jail. Take a listen to Fox 4's reporting on this.
It was here at this gas station on a spring May night. Kaylee Love in a dispute with her ex-boyfriend, but soon that turned deadly when she confronted him and he shot her twice, one of those bullets piercing her lung and her heart, killing the 19-year-old.
My child didn't get a second chance or a do-over. He stole from her, he abused her for at least a year before he killed her, and she didn't get a do-over. That was it. He took her life with no regard for her child.
Malik Weaver called police and told them that he shot her. Weaver wouldn't be charged for another 6 months. Eventually, he faced 4 felony counts, including second-degree murder. But the road ahead for Cobbins had only just begun.
I've done more time in jail for traffic tickets.
The Jackson County Prosecutor's Office would offer Weaver a plea deal, 1 count of involuntary manslaughter. He took it, and this man, who was caught on video killing Love, would only serve 251 days behind bars.
Stop right there. Malik Weaver called the police and told the police that he shot and killed his ex-girlfriend at a gas station. And what happened? The Jackson County Prosecutor's Office offered him a plea deal of 1 count of involuntary manslaughter after he killed his 19-year-old ex-girlfriend. And what ended up happening to this guy, Malik Weaver? He spent 251 days behind bars, 8 months and 1 week before he was released on probation after he killed a 19-year-old woman. And just so we're clear here, too, I don't want to beat around the bush. Both individuals are black. I know for some that might be considered taboo to just point out the obvious, but it is, I think, important to note, because when these charlatans and these shysters and these hucksters around town are screaming about this stuff and they're putting out their yard signs and doing their marches, you have a woke white lady prosecutor in Jackson County who is slapping black men on the wrist who are killing black women at gas stations, and somehow that's the fault of, I don't know, white conservatives and Republicans and gun laws or something like that? Are you kidding me? And I also want to compare this briefly, if I may, before I continue with the story here, to Eric DeValcanaire, the former KCPD detective who shot and killed Cameron Lamb in that incident going back to 2019. After, of course, you know, the story goes, Lamb's getting chased. After Lamb is chasing his girlfriend, they follow him into the backyard of a home. He has a gun, pulls it up, and they shoot him. Eric DeValcanaire is at 161 days behind bars today. Yet you have a guy who admitted to killing his ex-girlfriend in the parking lot of a gas station in this town. And Gene Peters Baker slapped him on the wrist with 251 days behind bars and then released him to the world on probation. Let's continue with this Fox 4 story.
Or 8 months and 1 week before he was released on probation. That's when the prosecutor's office encouraged Love's family to get an order of protection.
We didn't agree with the decision that they made to accept the plea deal, and they did it anyways.
In a statement to Fox 4, Prosecutor Gene Peters Baker's office said the plea was accepted earlier because we wanted to ensure a conviction in this case. Since his time out on probation, Weaver had a run-in with the law, racking up a felony drug charge in Johnson County less than 90 days after he was released on probation.
Once again, stop right there. Stop right there. So this guy gets released by Gene Peters Baker in Jackson County. And since his time out, he's already had at least one run-in with the law, racking up a felony drug charge in Johnson County. So once again, if you're sitting right now in Johnson, Wyandotte, Clay, Cass, and you're like, thank goodness we don't have Gene Peters Baker over here. And you're right, thank goodness we don't. But this does have impacts on us as a region. This is a criminal, bottom-of-the-barrel scumbag who should not be out on the streets right now terrorizing anybody in the Kansas City region. He is. He's already racked up a felony drug charge in Johnson County, Kansas, and was then released on bond in that case.
He was released on bond in that case. Prosecutors on the Missouri side have been attempting to revoke his probation since December of 2022. And for a while had not yet been successful.
He's a dangerous.
And over the course of that time, Cobbin says he has harassed her and her family.
If what happened to my child, is any indication of what other families have faced with the justice system here, there's no hope. Who would come forward if the murderers are able to taunt and harass the family? Who would come forward?
And that's exactly right from Miss Cobbins. She lost her 19-year-old daughter to an ex-boyfriend who shot her in a parking lot. And what do we hear all the time? From the prosecutor's office, from TV media. Hey, just call this number, call the TIPS hotline. You got a nice reward coming your way. My life is worth more than a few grand. That's what most people would say to that. If I'm going to tip somebody off, I better have some kind of protection. And you cannot trust this prosecutor's office to do the right thing. You just can't. And this is a great example about how all the issues that this county is facing when it comes to prosecution is because of that office, and it is impacting not people on the plaza, right? Not people in Brookside. It's impacting people in the urban core more than any. And to me, I hope packages like this are a wake-up call, and I think that in large part they are. John's on KCMO. Hey, John, good morning.
Hey, good morning. I actually know somebody who got 8 years in prison for like 10 grams of drugs they didn't know was in their glove box. But because she had the keys to the glove box and this other guy put it in there, she got convicted of possession of the methamphetamine and got 8 years in prison, and nobody died. And then I know another person that...
This was in Jackson County?
No, this was in Douglas County.
Oh, okay.
And Kansas. And then I know another person in Topeka that was drinking and driving and got into an accident. Wasn't their fault for the accident, but because they were drunk and the other person died, they got 15 years.
That's unbelievable. That's how you enforce the law, though.
But that's the difference. This guy pulls out a gun, shoots her intentionally, and gets 8 months. That is beyond ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So,
no, you're right. That's a great way to compare and contrast both sides of our state line there, John. Thank you. Guy drinking and driving ends up killing somebody, even though it's accidental. It is what it is. 15 years in the can. This thug, can I use that word, or is someone going to be offended by that too at KCUR? Malik Weaver shoots and kills his ex-girlfriend, admits to it, and Gene Peters Baker says, what do you think? 8 months in a week? You learn your lesson there, sonny boy? What a disgrace. Absolute disgrace. Everything wrong with prosecution in this town in a nutshell is this story right here. 913-408-7957. 913-408-7957. And Eric DeValcanaire, by the way, in prison for 161 days in this town for doing his job. In the meantime, we're here trying to figure out the awful job that continues to be done by Jackson County Prosecutor Gene Peters Baker. And Fox 4, to its credit, highlights this story of this thug, Malik Weaver, who shot and killed his ex-girlfriend, 19 years old, outside of a gas station after a dispute. And Gene Peters Baker slapped the guy with 8 months and 1 week in prison, 251 days after behind bars for killing Kaylee Love. Unbelievable. Prime example. And now Kaylee Love's mother is speaking out and is rightfully saying, hey, who the heck is going to talk to this prosecutor's office when this is what you guys do to people who admit they've shot and killed somebody? And that's what happened with this guy Weaver. He called the police himself, and he told them that he shot her. He wasn't charged for 6 months. And then after, he was charged, he got 8 months in the can. 913-408-7957. Bob is in Independence, and Bob was potentially going to be a juror in this case. Good morning, Bob. What's the story here?
Yep. So we were called for jury duty, and the prosecution and then the defense go through questions through everybody. And I was sitting there going, what is he asking? He's asking really strange questions about guns and domestic abuse.
Who's this? Who are you referring to?
The state, the county prosecutor.
Okay.
So, and then all of a sudden it clicked. It's like, oh, his defense is going to be self-defense and domestic abuse. Because then all of a sudden the defense lawyer gets up and starts asking questions. And, oh, man, when they started asking stuff about domestic abuse, jurors went out left and right. And about 2 o'clock, both the prosecution and the defense went up to the judge, and 2 minutes later, the judge goes, y'all can go home. We can't see the jury. I was like, oh, really? That's interesting. And so that day, I don't know if he had another jury trial, but that day they couldn't see the jury. There weren't 12. They couldn't confidently have 12 jurors that were not biased.
Wow. Because they were able to tie it into potentially domestic violence?
And self-defense. There were some sketchy things going on there. In my mind, I'm thinking, well, this isn't self-defense. You left, and then you came back.
Yeah.
So it's like, there's a problem with me right there.
So when was this for you?
Oh man, September, October last year, sometime around that time frame. Mm-hmm. So it was an interesting discussion going on there, because I'm telling you, this world is screwed up, dude. The people that have been had domestic violence against them, sex abuse, dads were bullies. It's incredible the stories people were telling. It's like, dang,
wow.
There's some really screwed up people in this world. Because probably they dismissed half of them just on that.
Wow.
There were, 60 of us? So 30 of us came back after lunch, and they couldn't see the jury from that.
Unbelievable.
So, and the look on his face was like, oh, my God, you mean I got to go back to jail? Mm-hmm. And I thought, dude, if they can't find a jury that's going to be sympathetic to you, you're better off going back to jail than wait for another jury and trying to find somebody that at least have some sympathy for you.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing that there, Bob. That is wild, man.
Yeah, it is.
Jeez. So Bob was set to be – go ahead.
So maybe it could be that the prosecutors, county prosecutors, realized they couldn't see the jury, and they did this plea deal.
I'd hope not. Listen, I'll take you at your word on this whole thing, Bob, but I hope that they would not give up after one day for a guy who shot and killed his ex-girlfriend in a parking lot, which this guy, Malik Weaver, ended up doing. I would hope they would not give up that easily on justice in this county, but you know what? I wouldn't put anything past them. Steve in KCK. Go ahead, Steve. What's up?
I can agree with you. Gene Peters Baker is the ringleader of, she's the DA, but this doesn't fall on just her alone. This is a team effort, because I've been in trouble. And the first thing your defense lawyer tells you is just because you're taking a plea doesn't mean that the judge has to go along with it. The judge has the right and the authority to sentence that guy to whatever he wants once he pleads guilty. He has the right to take it out of the prosecutor's hands and convict that man for murder like he should be. But this is the mentality, and this is what Democrats have voted for in Kansas City, this soft on crime, and they keep voting for her, and they keep putting her back in office. And where's Mayor Lucas at on that? You're going to have him on the show tomorrow. You will not hear one word of condemnation come out of his mouth for this prosecuting attorney.
No, and I've given him every opportunity. Thank you, Steve. Every opportunity to even politely criticize Gene Peters Baker, and he won't take it, and he won't do it, and I can't figure out why the hell not. Victor in Parkville, next up, wrapping up the hour. Go ahead, buddy.
You know, Pete, you want to blame Gene Peters Baker, but that's not where the fault is. The fault is the woke ideology and those who buy into it. Those are the ones that Kansas City had a great law and order candidate last time, but they chose to reelect a woke anti-police prosecutor. So people like Larry in Prairie Village and Don in Blue Springs need to open up their eyes to the truth and the reality of real life, because yard signs, warm and fuzzy feelings, and white guilt doesn't stop crimes. It takes good police work, good prosecutors, and full jails. That's what it's going to take.
We've got caller-on-caller crime before 7 a.m. on a Wednesday morning on KCMO. Thank you, Victor in Parkville. I'll ask the mayor about this one tomorrow. I mean, there's got to be a lot in the stadiums, obviously, but it's just such an embarrassment to this county and to this town. And there's no other way to spin it.